really lovely. She's a doll. She is a little person, and her name is Becky Curin. And I'm not really sure even if that is the proper way to express someone, but we're going to find that out right now as I welcome Becky Curin to our show. Hi, Becky.
Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Great, thanks. And how are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
So you're from Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
And
Born and raised.
born and raised, and you are what they call a little person.
Yes.
And is that the right way to express it? Is there another way?
Yes.
Yeah,
Little person or dwarf, I think
dwarf.
they're equally accepted.
Mm,
Uh, I always tell people just call me by my name because I'm just a person.
right. That works. That works. Growing up, you would call a little person a midget, but that didn't even sound right.
No, that term's very offensive to the little people community, and wherever it's used, whether it's in a corporate setting or on clothing or even in the grocery store, people are really offended by the term, and we try to encourage people to stay away from using the word completely
Mm,
because it has a connotation with the circus. And back in the old days, there
right.
were a lot of little people who were in the circus, and because there are so few of us, people automatically assume that we're all related to that population and we're all people.
Right.
And we don't want to be associated with a term that people joke about and
Right.
think it's okay to use.
Right. So you're how old?
I'm 29.
You're 29, and you've made a decision to come out and share about your life and about little people.
Yes.
Yeah, good, because I'm glad. Because like I said, I've always been fascinated um, I love people and I love stories, and I think it's so valuable to be able to learn and understand about people and different people and what they go through. It removes the stigmas and it brings us closer together,
Definitely.
and it allows us to know more about ourselves. So, tell me a little bit about you, what you do, your job, that kind of stuff.
Okay. I have a story. So, I was born and raised in Boston, and I grew up going to school just like everyone else. I participated in sports, soccer, sailing, skiing, and swimming, and that was all through school. And in college, I was on the sailing team. I like to show people just by living my life in the way that I was raised. I'm forced to adapt to the average height world, and even when it comes to competing in sports, those are the people who I would compete against. I didn't get involved in the Little People organization, which is called Little People of America. They have annual conferences every year where people get together for a week and share similar experiences that they go through in everyday life. I didn't get involved in that until I got to college because I was used to being the only different one in my group of friends, and I was okay with it. And I had a great group of friends that also allowed me to be prevented from bullying, which is a really nice thing because a lot of kids, especially kids who look different, get teased. And I was lucky that I was in a position where I had people to stand up for me if that was the case, and I didn't see it happening as much as your average person with a physical difference has
Right.
had happen to them. And my whole goal is to make it easier for the next generation because I see a lot of people who get teased and have trouble standing up for themselves, and they shouldn't have to be put in that situation just because they look different. And another thing that a lot of people automatically assume is if they see someone who's different, especially a little person, in that connotation with the circus and other areas where people put us in categories where they can joke about us, they automatically assume that we don't have the mental or physical capacity to live a full life. And that's far from the truth. I've been able to do anything anyone else can do. I'm going after any dream that I want to go after. There are times when obviously I need a stool or I use pedal extensions to drive a car, but really it's no different than just living a life like everyone else. And I'm exposed to so many people who are sometimes afraid to tell their story to other people, maybe obstacles they've overcome, and they feel comfortable telling to me because I can't hide my difference, And I encourage people to share their stories because it just makes them a better person to be able to be comfortable with themselves and maybe some obstacles they've had to overcome. They can realize how far they've come based on what they're willing to admit and just share. I think if we all share more of our stories, we can get a lot more done and make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I love stories. I've been loving Amnon will tell you, I've been loving stories for years, and I always knew that the stories were what was going to heal us. I mean, you know, I've never spoken to a little person in my entire life. I mean, I think maybe, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. No, I shouldn't say that. I have interviewed one little person a while ago, and I'm going to talk about that. But most people don't have that opportunity to
No.
have come together with somebody. And, you know, our worlds right now, your world and my world, your universe, my universe, are coming together now. And it's really lovely. You know,
And,
it's
and
really,
I
really
think it's
lovely.
just I feel my biggest asset is being the best version of myself and showing people that we have a lot more capabilities than people assume. That's why I always encourage people to ask me questions rather than assume things. And I think it'll put them at ease and they don't know what they could learn.
Yeah, and it's really it's interesting because that you said that and it felt so good because I have so many questions that just naturally want to ask, and I feel like, you know, being able to do that, I'll have more understanding, and certainly, you know, everybody out there will have more understanding, and then and that's what happens. I mean, the bullying occurs a lot of times because somebody's afraid of something, right? So it's easier to bully someone than to allow your feelings to get in the way and hurt through your feelings as opposed to hurting by bullying somebody. So we'd rather bully somebody than have to get close and, you know, feel the pain or, you know, feel badly for you. I might as well just stay away from you. So I want
And
to
that's a
ask,
great
go ahead, what were you going to say?
that's a great point because people, their first thing when they see us, they want to feel bad for us right away. And that's the last thing we would want on this earth. We just want to be accepted as equal members of society. And even I love when people can be honest with me, especially people who are close to me who feel comfortable being honest when it comes to constructive criticism and just the way I'm taking different approaches to do different things. Because there are some people that may let me get away with something because they're just afraid to talk to me about it. But how do I learn that way? I'm a human being just like everyone else, and I need to be critiqued when necessary.
Well, you know, this is a great opportunity because we all don't, I don't want to get away with anything either. I don't want to hide behind my fear either or either. So by being able to communicate with you, I can step out of my box as, you know, and that's the thing. Misunderstandings occur so often because people are afraid to ask a question from their heart. I mean, if they ask a question or they hold somebody accountable from their heart, can you only imagine what this world would be like if we did that? And so, you know, by us being able to have this open dialogue, and everybody out there, I'm holding you accountable to calling in too, 919-518-9773, or ask a question on the chat. And we do have one, so I'm going to ask you, and this is from Chris, and she said, Becky, how do children respond to you, and how are their responses different from adults?
Well, I have had a lot of children who point and wonder, a lot of really young kids wonder why I look like I could be a mom, but I'm the same height as them. They don't know if they're older than me. I had a cousin ask his mom because he was afraid to ask me directly, who's older, me or Becky? And it's just, they know something's different, but they can't figure it out. So some kids just stare and just look kind of up and down, trying to figure out what's different. Sometimes they'll ask their parent, and their parent actually may seem kind of embarrassed, and they may pull them in and be afraid to approach me, or they think that their child's making me feel uncomfortable by pointing and staring. But there have been people who've asked me that question in the past, how I would deal with that situation. And I would really encourage parents, especially of young kids who don't know any better at that point, to have them come up and ask me a question and realize that I'm just a person. And they can ask me whatever question they want. The most offensive thing that ever happened to me was when a mom pointed to her child and said, "Look over there," because I think that's poor parenting for a parent to tell their child, "Oh, something's different," when a lot of children now are being exposed to more diversity, and they could actually go home and teach their parents something, especially when I'm in the school environment talking to the kids. But I just hope to never see that happen again, because parents should be the one who are able to educate and
Right. Well,
help teach their kids acceptance.
Right. Well, we have a job ahead of us, but I think it's better than it's not. And I think that these kinds of conversations like you and I are having, and everybody out there that's on our chat and listening, and you're all part of it, whether you're calling in or not, these kinds of conversations are making us better. You're going to bring out the best in me tonight.
That's the goal.
That's the goal, and I feel it, and I got it, and I, hopefully will bring out, not me, but we will bring out the best in you, and then we'll be able to take these best things that we've come up with tonight and go out in the road tomorrow, in the street tomorrow, in the world tomorrow, and something will occur that we'll be able to do or understand based on what we've gotten from all of this tonight.
Definitely.
So are you the only little person in your family?
Yes. So my dad's 6'4", and my mom's about 5'1". Her family's on the shorter side, but neither of my parents carried the dwarf gene. Or neither of their families carried the dwarf gene, and one of my parents ended up carrying it and passed it on.
And they know. They knew that. Did they know? They knew afterwards.
They didn't know until the day I was born.
Okay. So hold on 1 second. We have a caller, but I have some questions about that. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Who is this?
My name's Mikey.
Hey, Mikey. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a few questions actually. If I understand, Becky's referring to herself as physically challenged. Does she have any physical challenges? Is she disabled, or does she work, or what is she doing for a career, I guess?
Great question. Did you hear that, Becky?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel that my only physical challenges are those that people put on me. Everyone always asks if I were to do it again, would I still be different? And I always say yes, but I'd want other people to accept who I was. So I feel that I can do any type of job. I spent 6.5 years working in the entertainment industry behind the scenes, and now I go around and speak to schools and hopefully corporations eventually. And I'm able to do anything that anyone else could do. I may just need a stool sometimes.
You need a what sometimes?
A stool.
A stool. See, I'm 5'2", and when I went to the doctor and she told me I was 5'1", I knew I needed a stool too. Yeah, so that makes perfect sense. So sometimes we all need a little help.
Yes.
Right? Terrific. Mike, thank you very much. I think you're off the line now, but thanks very much for calling in. And if you have another question, feel free to send us some information on the chat or call in. Let's see. Okay, so we have another question on the chat. If science is someday able to identify the genes that cause dwarfism and are able to treat and correct this mutation, should they? Ooh, that's a good question.
There are a lot of conversations about it. My whole concept, and even with my speaking, is I'm trying to make it easier for the next generation just to be able to be treated as equal members in society. And hopefully put a lot of average height parents, since 80% of little people are born to average height parents. So most of the average height parents don't know what to do and get scared when it happens. And I want people to realize that they don't have to be scared and we can lead normal lives. There are some medical complications that do come along with being a little person, depending on the type of dwarfism. There are 200 different types of dwarfism. The complications may be different, and some people I know have never had any surgeries. It just depends on the specific case. I think that might be one of the biggest fears. People want to eliminate the gene because they think that we go through a lot of complications and we just shouldn't live or shouldn't be a part of society because we struggle, people think. But I think a lot of us get a lot more out of life than people think, and I would hate to see the whole dwarfism population disintegrate. And I think it's important because even I'm a little person and I carry the dwarf gene, so most likely my children will be little, and I would just want to help them grow and be members of society.
So would you? So you would?
I would oppose it.
You would oppose it. You would oppose it. Okay, thank you. That's really an honest answer. I don't think we should get rid of anything like that unless you can't live a good existence unless you couldn't live a life. You know, if you were sick.
It's a lot more common in other countries. In America, we have a lot of great doctors and a lot of people who are willing to do the research and help out the population. But in other countries, it's not as accepted, and a lot of little people. It results in a lot of little people babies being put up for adoption. So they're strongly encouraging it more in other places. But I hope that we don't get to the point where it's big here as well. I know there have been conversations, but I oppose.
Good. So when you were born, how big were you?
I always joke that I was like a character where my head was a lot bigger than the rest of my body, but I think I was about the same size as your average baby. And that's why some little people aren't diagnosed until about 6 months or later. It just depends on finding the right doctor who knows exactly what's going on. Uh-huh. So I think when I first came out, I didn't look any different from any average baby.
Mm. And you live in an apartment or a house?
I live at home right now,
at home.
In my parents' house.
So have they had to modify your surroundings?
So when I was 3, we lived down the street just like a block away when I was first born, and then we moved to a neighborhood that they were building, and they finished our house when I was 3. So the only things they had done were they lowered the light switches in some of the rooms so I could reach them, and we have door handles that aren't doorknobs. They're just the long door handle, just so I would be able to pull it down rather than a knob where it would be harder to reach and maneuver. And then going down to our basement, we have 2 railings. One's a lower railing and one's a higher railing to go down the stairs. Those were the only accommodations made because a lot of people have to take this into consideration that if they want to ever sell their house again, most likely it's not going to be to little people. So you need to make the simplest accommodations that'll help you work with what you have. But if you make too many accommodations, the resale value, it'll just be really hard to resell a house. Uh-huh. So I have a friend who actually got a loan that allows her to accommodate her condo that she just bought. And she did a great job making simple accommodations where her cabinets are in the kitchen. Right below the cabinets, there's this drawer that pulls out that's really a stool, but it blends in with the wall, and you would never know that it was just a simple accommodation. Right. And then just the handles on her sinks and everything. She just made the most simple accommodations where it wouldn't be a bother to someone if they were to buy her condo after her.
Gotcha. Amnon's got a question.
Becky, I've got a question. You're saying that they changed the handles instead of knobs. Is it hard for you to turn a knob?
I think the thing is if something's up high, it's harder because you don't have your full strength of your hand, because you're really just reaching it and like my fingertips trying to open a knob. I can open a doorknob, but if I'm a lot lower than the doorknob, it makes it harder to open when I'm reaching high for it. So it's easier to have a handle that you can just pull and open the door.
Okay, so now educate me and us as to things. I mean, are there any other things everyday
Challenges?
It's not. No, I wouldn't call it challenges. First of
uh-huh.
all, I would say anything that you do that people do during the day that you find harder to do.
So one of the hardest things is going to the bathroom at a restaurant and really wanting to wash my hands when I get out of the bathroom and the sink happens to be too high. Most bathrooms have really high sinks. And even if I can reach part of the sink, reaching the handles can be another challenge. And then reaching the soap on top of that. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge, just because you're not in a place that you're comfortable with, and it's trying to find someone who looks nice enough to help you. But if you're in a small bathroom or even just a one-person bathroom, there isn't really someone there who can help. And the other thing is going to the grocery store, trying to reach something on the top shelf. I think my choices just end up being things that are lower, whether I really want something on the top shelf or not. There are times where I can ask someone, but there are other times where people are a little shaky and hesitant in my presence, just fear of the unknown. So I know who may be comfortable if I ask them, or who may be caught off guard. And then that makes it really uncomfortable if I ask the wrong person, because then they're shaking and they may even drop whatever they're getting for me.
And I don't mean it as a joke, but did you ever think about carrying a foldable step stool?
I do have one, but I do not carry it around nearly enough. And no, that's a great idea. I should.
I think it would. Like if you're in a restaurant and the owner sees you going to the bathroom carrying a step stool, that will be a lot stronger than asking, why can't you do this? And in the store, in the grocery store, if the workers seeing you doing this, that's something that they go to the manager and say, we saw this, we really need to do something about that.
No,
I think it drives the message a lot harder.
That is a really good idea.
Do you feel comfortable asking people, even if they look funny?
I do. I just am nervous about how much I'll get out of them, or how much help I'll get out of them.
Sometimes they're so, you're the strong one. You're the strong one.
I had a situation where I had got a cut in my head, and I was going to the dermatologist to get the stitches taken out, and this guy came in. He was a substitute for my regular dermatologist, and he started shaking like really bad, and he was trying to take the stitches out, and I got really mad at him, because he shouldn't, especially in that profession, you shouldn't be so nervous. And I told him that I was willing to wait until we could get my actual dermatologist, because I wasn't going to have someone right near my head who was really nervous.
Mm-hmm. Right. But yeah. And you are the strong one. And we have a lot of things on the chat that I want to read to you, but I also want to say that when I did interview this woman years ago, she lived in a house with her husband, and he was also a little person, but bigger than she was, and they modified the kitchen. It was like being in a dollhouse.
Some people do it, and especially if their families, everyone's little, they decide that that's what they want to do. But I think since in the outside of the home we're forced to adapt, it's important to just make the accommodations you need, and
you make it work.
Yeah.
You make it work. So, Todd, and we know who Todd is, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Todd. Okay, so Todd said Becky's goal is to write a children's book. There's been a conversation on the chat about you writing a book. And so
Yes.
Todd said Becky's goal is to write a children's book first, and then a bit down the road to write an adult book. There's been a lot of, information on the chat about how great that would be, because, of course, starting with the kids. Because they're the next. They're the next.
Well, the idea kind of sparked I was speaking in front of a 6th grade class, and I was reading this book. It was called Thinking Big, and it's a book we actually gave to everyone in my neighborhood when we first moved into the neighborhood, just so they would be aware of the situation. It's about this girl, Jamie Osborne, and it goes through her everyday life of just adapting, and she goes to a Little People convention, and it shows her going to school and her friend who helps her out. And it's really just to show that she's just a kid just like everyone else. But
Right.
she's 8 in that book. And when I was reading to the 2nd grade kids, they were a little lost, and they were their attention span was not as great as maybe someone a little bit older who would be able to understand the book more. So I want to have something that can really touch those younger kids, but also educate adults, because everyone likes pictures, and I think people can learn from both formats. And then the adult book, it's actually, I really want one called Just Call Me Becky, because I think society just tries to fixate on the fact that I'm a little person, so let's just call her a little person, but I'm just a person, and you can call me by my name.
Right. Right. So let's see. Okay. So somebody said it sounds like you have lived in many cities. I'm not sure if you have, but have you noticed a difference in attitudes and how people treat someone with dwarfism based on the city or the region?
So,
like the East Coast or the West Coast, is it different?
So I grew up in Boston, but I went to school in Providence, and then I lived in Los Angeles for 6.5 years. I would say that in California, because there are a lot more little people, so most likely people you come across have met a little person before or have at least seen one. They're more open to coming up and talking to you and just talking to you like a normal conversation, and even if they have questions, they may not ask them. So in California, I feel like a lot of the people, it was friendly on the surface, but you don't really know what they're going to do with the information that they get from you. I'm not saying they're going to exploit me, but I don't know how much more they're willing to invest in learning and trying to figure out how we just want to be treated as equal members of society. I do notice sometimes my biggest pet peeve is when people talk to me like I'm 5, because I'm the height of a 5-year-old, so they assume that I'm 5. So that happens kind of everywhere, just depending on the type of environment you're in.
Mm-hmm.
In the Northeast, in Boston, since I've come back in November, I've noticed there are a lot of people who are very well educated, and they don't understand the situation, but they want to learn and invest time and energy around trying to understand. They appreciate my honesty on how I'm treated in society, and they try to treat me just like everyone else. But I think in both environments, it's really tough to find like a solid group of friends that really just want you to be a part of their group. A lot of my friends in Massachusetts generate from people I grew up with, but it's not as easy to make new friends, more acquaintances. So in both places, I would say acquaintances are easier to make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But there's a lot more tolerance to diversity in California because there's more of it.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that you're finding out. I mean, you're really getting into the heart of things. Mm-hmm. Because when somebody has a disability, they're in a wheelchair, they can't hear, there's so many things they can't see, but you have such a life. And I could see somebody coming over to you and like screaming at you because thinking that you can't understand them, or that you don't speak English. Chris wants to know what challenges you face about dating.
That question always comes up. So, growing up, I actually had a crush on someone for 7 years. He was an average height guy that I grew up sailing with, and I knew there was nothing that ever happened there. I just was fascinated. I thought he was cute, and I don't think, like, I don't know what I was expecting out of it, but it was a good distraction while I was growing up. As I got older to high school, a lot of my friends started excluding me when they started dating guys. They just were like, we don't know if you can be around because we don't know if you can associate with guys. I started making some close friends that maybe there could have been more, but a lot of people are afraid of what others think, and especially at the high school level, people are afraid of what their friends would think if they invested more energy in dating someone like me. So when I got to college, I got involved in the Little People organization. And one struggle with that is, since there are only 30,000 little people in the United States, most likely I'm going to meet someone who's not in the same state as I am. And it takes a lot of time and energy to invest in something that you don't know if it's going to work or not, because you're spending so much time apart, you don't know how it is being together. Mm-hmm. So about 4 years ago, I had my first relationship where we did long distance for a year, and then we lived together for 6 months, and that didn't end up working out, but it's better to know early than later in life. And then a few months later, I ended up going to another convention, and I met another little person who I dated for about 18 months, but we were long distance the entire time. So we were together about a month of that. Mm-hmm. So it really takes a lot of energy and effort to communicate, whether it's Skype or on the phone, or making sure you are still working towards the same goals. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately it takes one person having to pick up whatever they're doing in order to be with that person. And you can make it work, and I think I really prefer at this point to be with another little person because they have an understanding of the obstacles that I overcome in my everyday life and the obstacles they overcome in their everyday life. And you just have a lot more to talk about, mm-hmm. and you don't have to worry about that layer of fear that people may have because of what their friends think. I think if it were to be with like an average height guy, most likely it would have to be someone who has a little person, or maybe a person in their family with some type of physical difference. Mm-hmm. So it shows that they're tolerant of it and not afraid what people think.
It must be, in crowds. Is it scary for you in crowds?
Yes.
Oh, I bet going through the airport or anything like that, must be really scary.
Yes, it really is. It's not, I avoid going to. I had this opportunity when I was in California. I worked in the comedy department, and it was part of the music touring department, and that allowed us to go to Coachella, the music festival, every year, and I just avoided it. I sold my ticket every year because I couldn't. It just being in that environment and being at people's elbows. Yeah. It just, same with going to a club or a bar where people sometimes meet people. It's a lot more challenging trying to.
So does it bother you? I mean, does it hurt you? Does it bother you? Or do you just accept it?
Which part?
About not going into crowds or going to a bar.
I've accepted it at this point. I think I was bothered maybe in the younger years when I was first able to go out more, like in college. I was left out a lot, so that made it a little harder then. But now I'm comfortable enough. If I want to just go somewhere, I could just go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I go to networking events all the time, so I may not know anyone who's going to be there, but I'll go and meet people, and I'm not afraid to go out and meet people and not wait around for other people.
So when did that happen for you? Or how did that happen for you that you became unafraid?
Okay, so I think it has to do with when I first moved out to California after college. I thought I had a job when I first got there, and it fell through right when I got there, and I went on 100 interviews, up to 4 a day. So I was going into rooms meeting strangers 4 times a day. And it also required me to reach out to a big network of people. I reached out to a lot of people who are had gone to Providence College, where I went to college, and that allowed me to just understand the lay of the land, and I couldn't be afraid. I had to just keep going out and meeting people, and there were a lot of rejections. There wouldn't be 100 interviews if there were rejections,
Right.
but I just had to be open and okay about it. I got involved early on in this group called Junior Hollywood Radio and Television Society, and that allowed me to meet a lot of people who worked in the television industry. And then I served 2 years on the board, and that allowed me to be part of a big network of people. And I could pretty much fill every night of the week meeting people, catching up over drinks, or wherever people wanted to meet up. I was able to just find a way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So out in California, I would say a lot of the people maybe I met up with and we caught up once or twice, but at least it filled time. There were a lot of people
Right.
to meet up with.
I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to forget the people on the chat, too. So I'm going to put my questions aside, and I'm going to go with some of these on the chat, because I have some I want to get into, too. So what's your opinion of the TLC show featuring Matt Roloff and his family?
Little People, Big World.
Yeah.
I would say that it opened up a lot of doors for the Little People community. It built a lot of awareness. It just shows that they lead a normal life. I like how they showed Zach going through surgery, because those are parts of our lives. And there's one thing that I would have liked to see more. Mm-hmm. They were in a farm in Oregon, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of their exposure in a big city, because there are a lot of reactions in big cities. People make comments, people point and stare, especially just any heavily populated area. It really shows what we go through in everyday life, just walking to the store.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing where people, I think because of the show, they automatically think that we're all the part of the family on the show. Everyone thinks that all little people look alike.
Right.
So I've been mistaken for Amy many times.
Uh-huh.
And there's a huge phenomenon going on where people feel like it's okay to take pictures of us. So we could be sitting, eating dinner somewhere, especially in a big city where there are a lot more people. There are people who come and interrupt our dinner and ask, can we take pictures? Most likely it happens more when I'm with another little person, just like we're at dinner or something. But it still happens on my own where people ask, can I take a picture? And it just doesn't make sense, because I have to convince them that I've never been
Sign it as an autograph.
I would just tell them to go and take the pictures with the people in the next table.
Oh, my God. Can
So
you
we
imagine?
sometimes come back with the question of, can we take a picture of you? And then they kind of put themselves in our shoes and realize it's not comfortable.
Well, you know what, though? Maybe that is what they needed to realize something different, something bigger. Do you know? See, you're special. And you know, I always said God, the universe, divine, whoever you want to call it, Allah, I don't care who you call it, decides, you know, somebody's going to be something or have a certain way of living, and you're special. So you're going to be great no matter what you do, because you get to be in the middle, representing, you know, an entire population of people. And you know, for somebody to have to come over to you and to ask to take your picture, and for you to come up with some kind of good, loving comment that helps them understand what they've done and what they could do, and maybe a different way of thinking and being could change the world. So I mean, you're like this container for this. And I think that you're going to really make a difference for those people by the response that you have. You know, and I don't wish that on you. I don't wish crazy, stupid, shitty things, excuse me. However, if something could change the world, it could be you. Because somebody's going to go over to somebody in a wheelchair necessarily and say, can I take your picture? But if they come over to you, you have a great opportunity. We have somebody, I think, on the line. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Todd, who you alluded to earlier. I just wanted to call in and say hello, and I think maybe you took the words out of my mouth. I've known Becky now for 3 months. I'm her friend, but also her, I don't know what I am, her publicist maybe, her website designer, but I'm her friend, and I guess what I wanted to say is Becky is remarkable. She don't misjudge her size, because she's a powerhouse is what she is. She's taught me an awful lot as a human being in the time I've known her, and I don't know where she's going to go, but I know that she's going to teach people an awful lot as she furthers her career.
Todd, you're very fortunate. Both of you are very fortunate to be able to have this experience together, and I'm grateful that that we can have a threesome.
Ooh. No, and I'm gonna agree with that, Marilyn. This is new to me. I'm playing on the chat, and I'm watching, and I'm listening, and the one thing that I chimed in on is you as a host. You're compassionate, you're thoughtful, you're beautiful. So I guess I want to thank you for making Becky's time so comfortable. The number of viewers has not wavered one single bit. It's done nothing but grow since I've been on, and I think that's a credit to both you and Becky for keeping the audience entertained.
Thank you.
I'm going to sign off because you do have a lot of questions to answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. You and I we'll be in touch to get. You and I got to connect some more, okay?
Oh, we will, hon. We
All
will.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, you got a love bug over there. But thank you, Todd, and really, honestly, Becky, you really have this energy that will, that's going to allow people to come over to you and really understand more. So I thank you for that, because that's vital to all of this. Anyway, Chris just said she just found you on Maria Shriver's website. She wants to know how you're connected.
So,
this is another good story.
There are these two guys from towns right near where I grew up, and they have this organization called Stay Classy, and they're all about creating an online fundraising platform for nonprofits that do remarkable things, and they're doing an amazing job. They're based out of San Diego, and every year they have this award ceremony called the Classy Awards, and it's basically Oscars for the nonprofit world, really making those nonprofits feel amazing. Like there's one nonprofit called Team Rubicon, where they go in to where the troops are fighting, and they feel like they're comfortable enough to go in further than the American Red Cross is comfortable. So they're saving that many more lives. There's Movember, where guys wear mustaches, even girls can put on fake mustaches and raise money through the month of November. And it all goes to prostate cancer research and fundraising. There are so many different organizations that are really selfless deeds. People are just making a difference in this world just by trying to find solutions to huge problems that may no longer be a problem eventually. And they just have all these amazing people get together when they have this Classy Awards every year. And I was able to meet a guy who runs Maria's blog, and then that allowed me to contribute. And I am going to work on another post shortly that'll go up there as well.
Yeah, that's what it takes. I mean, there should be nothing that stands in your way. Nothing. 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 Not even that person on the aisle. Nothing. Anywhere should stand in your way. Nothing. So we have another question from a child, and he wants to know, besides the knobs and the handles and the light switches, he would like to know what things you do to make it easier for yourself to get around every day, to access things on a daily basis.
I do a lot of climbing. I
Everest.
I've been I've been working really hard to stay active and work out every day. I know that doesn't relate exactly to the question, but I think creating more strength allows me to be able to do more and kind of climb easier and adapt. I feel like since it all comes so natural and I'm used to jumping, there's one thing that I'm not afraid to talk about, but one of the hardest things is getting up on a toilet that's really high. Sometimes I pinch my leg
Oof.
if the seat's loose.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
There are other things that
Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
don't think about, but I guess your average person would think about. The car, I have pedal extensions that allow me to drive just like anyone else. Really, just it's nice to have light switches, counters. Even if I were to get a house, I think that's one thing that maybe I would adapt. It's nice to be able to reach the counter and feel comfortable in that space. I just find ways to make things work, even if they don't look like they do.
Right. That's amazing. So what about clothes?
Another question.
Yeah, well, I that's something I've always been
I'm
curious
just saying
about.
another question because it's a common question that
Yeah.
I don't think about, but a lot of people do. So
Well, you know
this,
why it's so interesting to me is when I have seen like little people in the airport, their clothes look just, the shoes, the clothes, everything looks just perfectly like normal and adult, big people clothes.
it takes a lot of good searching, but for me, I'm like a petite small, and then pants are the one thing that I have to get taken in. But when it comes to dresses, which I wear a lot of, just because it's easy, just to throw on a dress and not have to alter it, I can just buy it off the shelf. It definitely depends. There are certain dresses, especially if they have pockets on the side, that I won't buy because they accentuate my hips. Like there are certain things I know about my body and what will work and what won't before I even try it on.
Right.
But then this jacket that I'm wearing has quarter lengths.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like long sleeve on me.
Right.
So most styles of clothing now, even almost every store, has at least a shirt or two that are 3/4 length. And that has been a blessing. And same with capri pants. There are some pants that I don't have to alter because they're capris and they're normal pants on me. But I do have friends who have had more struggles and obstacles, especially when it comes to only having the kids' department to choose from.
Right.
My roommate who I lived with in California, he was a foot shorter than me, so he was 3'2", and he would go into these stores. He would always find very fashionable clothing, but it took a lot of time and effort to find the right things because there are these shirts that have trucks all over them, and there's so many things that scream kid all over it.
Right.
He just found a way to find things that didn't, but it took a lot more time.
Amazing.
But same thing, just a way that it relates to even the housing accommodations. A lot of people ask, why don't you go into the business of selling clothing for little people? Since there are 200 different types of little people and only 30,000 in the U.S., that makes the market really small because not every type of clothing line is going to fit each type of little person. And we're all built so differently where the business just wouldn't sustain itself.
So, and we're going to run out of time, and I can't even imagine. But so medically, I know you. I heard you, and you're athletic, so you've done a lot of things to keep yourself strong. Medically, I know that there are some things that you would be faced with, and
Yes.
those are things you just can't deny.
No.
They're just part of your life.
They are, and I was blessed to be found a doctor who's a specialist in Baltimore when I was 6 months old, and my parents were really nervous and scared up until the point where I was 6 months because they just wanted to make sure I was going to be okay, and they had never even thought of having a little person child, and they just wanted to make sure that I could still lead a normal life. So we met this doctor, Dr. Stephen Kopitz. He passed about 10 years ago, but he was a lifesaver. He told my parents that I was going to lead a normal life. Obviously, there were going to be medical complications. So when I was 3, I was born with bowed legs. Well, I think it came, as you were asking if I looked, how I looked when I was first born, I think maybe it took a few months for it to really show that my legs were bowed. But once we started seeing my legs grow and get more bowed, we decided to take care of it when I was 3, where he took bone out of both of my legs to straighten them out. Then when I was 13, he took bone from my pelvis. There's a lot of liquid bone there that I guess can be used for anything if needed. And he put bone back in my legs when they were ready to stop growing, so in order for them to align and grow together. Then when I was 15, I had spinal cord compression, and I had 7 pieces of my lower vertebrae taken out. If someone were to hit me with a ball or something really hard in my lower back, there's no protection on my spinal cord. It's kind of like a horseshoe. So you have part of the bone, but not all of it. And luckily, I was in great hands. My doctor who did my back surgery, Benjamin Carson, he's known for separating Siamese twins of the brain. And I was very fortunate to have him do my back surgery, and I haven't had a problem ever since. There are other people who are starting to have problems even around my age, and I think a lot has to do with the fact that doctors in other places have said, let's wait until it gets really bad before we take care of it because of the risk factor. Mm-hmm. And I'm very thankful that a lot of my things were taken care of as I was still a kid and able to recover faster. And I know that in the future, if I choose to have kids, that I won't want the same thing. I would want to address the problems before they come bigger, and that the bounce back rate is slower.
You know, it's amazing because sometimes, you know, I'm one of those people who I don't want to face something I don't know I'll have to face. So why should I face it now? You know, why have to face a problem I think I might have, as opposed, you know.
Even with the back surgery, we had this big party at the yacht club where I grew up sailing right before I went to have my surgery. And a lot of my friends were afraid to talk to me because they thought that I was going to die because they were working so close to my spinal cord. And I was not really thinking about that. I was scared. I just wasn't thinking that was what could happen.
Because it wasn't going to. It wasn't in your realm of thinking.
No.
But for you, you know, it's certainly, we have to look at things differently. It's not the same thing for everybody. I don't want to think about things that might happen, you know, down the road because they may not happen. You, on the other hand, you have to think about those things because the law of averages say some of those things could happen. And you really have, and I know your parents are listening, right?
Yes.
And you have sisters?
I have one sister.
One sister. I know they're listening, and I want to tell you that you have done an amazing job being a family. You know, I was going to say parents, but I really think you just have an amazing family.
Everyone always likes this joke. My dad always joked that he wanted 2 kids and my mom wanted 1, so they settled at 1.5. Because my sister's average height, and they also just wanted to share that because they wanted people to know that. Some people go, you didn't really just say that. But they wanted me to be comfortable with the outside world and what comments and things could come my way. And I think they did a really great job at that because they're not going to let me get down because of the way society may react. And I think even when we were talking about the picture thing, even just in everyday life when people are pointing and staring, I think people get more out of silence, like not reacting, because they also realize that it's not affecting me, so right. They're doing something wrong, and hopefully they learn from that. I also always say to people, if you dealt with something in the past, and like even now after listening and people hearing my story, if people dealt with something in a weird way in the past, don't worry about it and don't think about that. just worry about how you treat people in the future, because you've learned
Absolutely.
something new now and you can treat it differently in the future. And that's all people should think about, because a feeling of guilt and fear mixed together is not a good match.
Absolutely, and that is for everything. That is maybe one of the best definitions or precursors to the Breaking Free show or the Breaking Free attitude, is that no matter what you have experienced or done, now's a whole new day.
Yes.
You know, and it's time. I'm sure. I don't know if I've ever teased anybody. Maybe I did, not knowing it was teasing, and all that stuff. But I would never do that. And I think that society, they just need people like you. That's why having a show like this with a picture to me is so valuable, because, you and I could be on a radio chat, but you have to be seen and heard. And I think it's so important. You just got to keep going out there, and society needs a chance. Mm-hmm. It needs a chance to prove itself. We each need a chance to show that we're bigger than our fear. And you'll help do that. There's no question in my mind. And so tell everybody your website and all the goodies that are going on for you, because that's very important.
Well, we had a great, successful website launch. It's BeckyMotivates.com. And that whole name came out of a blog I started about 3 years ago. And that's BeckyMotivates.tumblr.com. And my whole concept and point is just to show that I lead a normal life just like everyone else. And I encourage everyone to approach me and ask any questions they want at any point in my life. And I also like to educate people about other people who inspire me and that are doing great things. I don't like sharing any negative stories. I try to stay away from anything related to politics or even fighting against things that other people in the community may need to fight against, whether it's just use of the M word and other things that may come up. My whole thing is just being the best version of myself and being organic and not making people feel uncomfortable and educating them. And hopefully that leads to less of people making fun of people and taking negative actions towards little people. Rather, I think I can get a lot more done without fighting towards people and just showing them the truth. I will answer questions if people ask me my thoughts, as we talked earlier about the thoughts of eliminating the gene. I will share my answer because I said anyone could ask any question, but I'm not going to make people feel uncomfortable because I don't think I'm accomplishing anything that way. So it's all about motivating and educating and hoping that people learn from it, and next time they see a little person, they are willing to go up to them and talk to them, and everyone can learn from each other. Absolutely.
That was well said. And just, keep in touch with us and make sure that you, on the Breaking Free Facebook page, that you keep up with what's going on. And if you want to guest blog some, we'd love to have you. And I will be in touch with you. I'd love to have you back, because I just think that there's more to talk about, and not just about dwarfism, but just about freedom.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you more about that. I think you have a handle on something and a way of expressing yourself, that is beyond your size, beyond that part. And I think that's something that we should get into.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I'd love to.
And that's also the message. I think people automatically think that I only speak to audiences of people with disabilities or people with physical differences. I think audiences who have a mix or audiences who have nobody with a physical difference could learn just as much, because there are so many people with internal disabilities that they may be hiding, afraid to talk about. I love when I go into schools and kids are telling me stories about their aunt or uncle who happens to be disabled, and they really try to find a way to relate. And I think we can all relate, whether we look different or not.
Yeah, we need to be able to talk about these things. Just, that kid needs to be able to go over to somebody and talk about somebody, because chances are they might not be able to talk about it just like this,
Exactly.
And and it's these are things to talk about. So Becky, you're just marvelous, and I thank you so much for sharing your beautiful smile and your energy and all of that. I'm speechless.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a delight, and I want to thank everybody out there for being with us tonight and for sharing and listening and loving Becky so much, and me too, because I caught some of that. And so thank you so much, and we'll be back here next week. Remember to look for her website. Remind them of it again.
BeckyMotivates.com. BeckyMotivates.com.
Perfect. So thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. till noon. Carrie's Psychic Cafe with Carrie Silkowski, Sundays 8 till 9 p.m. Health In with Debbie Bruck, Mondays 11 a.m. till noon. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 8 till 9 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays 9 till 10 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.